Let me focus just on that point that Mr. McGrath made about us not being a party to the case, and I want to focus on the transfer of €29 million from the Insurance Compensation Fund and its use as security of costs in a case which involved no state parties, okay, essentially private parties, and the governance around that. And my questions, and I'm not here to quiz anybody. The ultimate governance arrangements for the insurance compensation funds is the responsibility of the Oireachtas, and my questions are trying to elicit what is very clearly a governance gap in the insurance compensation fund. It was very clear from the last meeting that almost everybody in the room thought that the insurance compensation fund was somebody else's responsibility, so I want to focus on that. So the Insurance Act 1964 was there to ensure policyholders who were left in the case of an insolvent insurance company were protected. So my question is, what legal basis was used in the Insurance Act? Which section of the Act was used to release the funds of 29 million for security of costs by the President of the High Court? I might ask the department first, because
to walk the deputy through the process of how this works and the role of the High Court in it, if that's okay.
I'm somewhat familiar, but
yeah. but I think just for the record of the proceedings here.
Yeah, I think, I mean, so first of all, Deputy, and sorry, you're behind me here, so sorry, I'm talking away from you. I think the ICF is kind of it's got multiple actors that are there, but I think this, to get to the core point for you, I think the High Court has a significant role in relation to administrators or liquidators. In this case, we're talking about an administrator. And I mean, amounts of money paid out of the ICF in relation to any insurer, to be a liquidator or an administrator, would be done with the approval of the High Court. In accordance. My
question was though,
sorry,
which section of the Act did they use to release the money?
Yeah, as I understand it, it's in accordance with Section 3 of the Insurance Act 1964, as has been amended by the 2018 Act.
Okay.
So the approval is done that way so the administrator of the issue that's before them, so in this case Quinn, goes to the High Court, presents the case and seeks approval for funds to be taken out.
I have to say I've read Section 3 and I did struggle to find, and I'm not a legal expert, but I did struggle to find that basis. But the difficulty we have is that the President of the High Court is a member of the judiciary, and as a member of this House, I'm precluded from second-guessing the decisions of the President of the High Court. So that is a significant governance gap where no public body can question or quiz the decisions made by somebody who is administering a public fund. Would you accept that, Mr. McGrath?
Well, no, sorry. I mean, Deputy, I think, to be honest with you, I think it would be unwise of me to be commenting on the provisions of the High Court and the role between the...
Equally, it would be unwise of me to do it too.
So I think I can only be guided by what is in the...
You can hardly expect him to comment in the same manner.
But doesn't that show the governance gap? That neither of us in this room, who are responsible for public finances, for administering the fund, for holding public bodies to account, that none of us can examine or seek transparency around the distribution of public funds.
Well, I mean, I think that is a separation of powers, between the courts.
I accept the separation of powers.
I'm not a constitutional lawyer, so
yeah.
But I think so. So I'm not sure really what more I could say about that.
So the Department of Finance can't assist the Public Accounts Committee in how we might have greater transparency of a fund which the Oireachtas established.
Well, no, I mean the department in its role has set out the legislative framework, and yes, the accounts are audited and presented each year to the Oireachtas with the information that is in it. Excuse me. So I mean, so there is quite transparency there. The auditor, or sorry, not the auditor, the administrator goes into the court seeking funds in relation to an issue and the High Court adjudicates not. But overall, I mean, there are audited accounts. The central bank has to maintain.
Of course there are. Of course,
audited accounts.
Mr. McGrath, if
So there is oversight.
If with regard to the other duties and responsibilities which the department had, you allocated public funding to any particular source, you'll be subject to it being examined here before the PAC. Would that be correct?
If it's a voted expenditure, then
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
minister of the day would be in terms of
And every government department is.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, and pretty much even those bodies that receive partial funding from the state are examinable by this committee and by other auditing bodies like the local government auditor and so on.
But Deputy, I think what we're getting to here is the issue whether, you know, the oversight in relation to any court awards, and really that's not something that really I think I should be getting into in any way.
Oh, of course, except the difficulty here is that public money is being gathered for the purposes of the insurance compensation funds, and decisions are being made about how that is dispersed, but we don't have. There's a governance gap, and I'm not blaming you, I'm not blaming the central bank here. I'm asking you to assist me in identifying a clear governance gap here, where it is not possible to interrogate or to examine the reasons why 29 million was transferred to effectively for the use of third parties. And that's unusual, isn't it?
No, sorry, let me just clarify the 29 million. The 29 million was security of cost that was sought that the Supreme Court had adjudicated. In order for the case to proceed, then the joint administrator had to put this money up as a security of cost in the eventuality of a case being lost or costs being found against them. So that 29 million came back to the ICF. So that's what I said at the outset.
Whether it did or didn't, and I think that's...
No, but it did come back.
But whether it did or didn't, that's not the discussion I'm having. The discussion I'm having is that a decision was made to allocate public money, and in every other normal course of events, it is possible to have a discussion about that. And in this forum, it is not possible for me to discuss the decision made by the President of the High Court because of the separation of powers. And do you agree with that assessment?
On matters that are before the court, there's a separate issue, so
Yeah.
so I agree with that. But I mean, beyond that, I'm not sure what I can add to any of that. Deputy.
But as a public servant, are you concerned with that?
I think really commenting on the constitutional arrangements, really I shouldn't, to be frank.
But it's the nature of the framework that was in operation around all of this, Deputy. And we have to operate and abide by that framework. And in affairs, I mean, it is very difficult for us as public servants to comment on the nature of the relationship between yourselves and the judiciary.
I accept your position, but I don't know why you're being defensive about it. I'm asking for your assistance in identifying the gap.
I think we're trying to protect our position in relation to this.
Yeah, that is the problem.
And we don't want to find ourselves breaching a line here.
Yeah.
In relation to the separation of powers.
But let's be clear.
And I think
people on this
all
side,
of us have responsibilities to
it's people on this side of the table who are responsible. Okay, we're the ones that set the framework. We set the governance arrangements. I'm not looking to blame anybody here. I'm looking for your assistance to identify what is a clear gap so that we can put forward policy amendments and changes. That's what the Oireachtas does. So there's no blame game here. I'm not looking to hang anybody out to dry. I'm looking for you to help me to change the governance arrangements. Okay, and I can't do that without getting to the bottom of these questions. So I really would ask you not to be defensive about it. Haven't given you any rough questioning. I haven't.
No, you're not. No, Deputy, in fairness, you're not. But I think what we're trying to get to the bottom of here is the way in which we can help the PAC, because I come here regularly in front of you as the accounting officer to deal with all sorts of issues here. And I think that you'll find that we are in the Department of Finance as open and transparent as we can be around all of these arrangements. I've come here, sorry, can I maybe just help finish? I've come here this morning where we were asked about the number in relation to this. We have been transparent in that. Wasn't the position that we were comfortable with the last time that officials were here. We are as comfortable as we can be in all of these things where there were court processes in place that we can disclose information to you. Deputy, ultimately at the end of the day, it's very difficult for us as public servants to comment on the nature of that relationship between the judiciary, ourselves and yourselves, right? It's a very, very difficult area for us to do it. I caution how we describe it, but also as a legislator, you can reach your own conclusions in relation to this on the basis of the facts that you see in front of you. And I think that's as much as I can say on this.
I would love to know. I would love to have a forum where I can ask the question about why public funds were used for for security of costs for a case that had entirely private parties. I'd love to have a forum where I could say what conditions were put in place for the use of state resources. For example, that there will be full transparency, that there will be no confidentiality clauses that precluded state bodies from doing. They're all really normal things that somebody who's responsible for ensuring that public finances are protected should be able to ask. And because of the nature of the insurance compensation funds, I don't have a forum to hold to account anybody for that, for the entire fund, right? But also, in particular, for the decisions made to disperse those funding. That's incredibly unusual.
Sorry, I accept I hear your conclusion on it, Deputy. I think what we've attempted to do today is try and explain the process in as explicit terms as we can around all of this. We have tried to be as forthcoming in relation to the numbers associated with it. I think, you know, the figure of 54 million is a significant number for anybody, right? That the security costs that were put on the table in relation to this to allow the state to ultimately realise the produce of this particular process has been repaid to the fund. So the fund has now increased by, Michael, was it 83 million overall between the two things? But I accept and note the exchange that we've had around all of this, Deputy.
Look, I am a member of Oireachtas. I am not a subscriber to a newspaper. Information in regards to public funds should be made available to me via public servants and reports to this House, not via newspaper articles. And I'm not suggesting you are responsible for that. I'm just suggesting there's a very clear, and I would say particularly to the Department of Finance, who obviously have a policy responsibility in this area to bring forward legislative changes, that I am identifying to you a very clear governance gap here where there is no accountability or opportunity to interrogate the use or disbursement of funds under the insurance compensation funds, and I believe that's a matter for the department and the minister.
Thanks, Deputy. That's a statement. It has a statement. I share your frustration, but I think that there is clear division between the Oireachtas and the forecourts, and that has to be there for a good reason. But unfortunately, with this piece of responsibility has been,
which I think, and we can discuss it. We can discuss it in private session. But I think there's a very clear need. We asked the participants to come back with more senior representation, and for good reason, because I think you say you're as comfortable as possible, right? But it's very clear that even with the most senior representation in the room, this committee can still not get to the bottom of why public funds. I see the Controller General indicate.
Maybe just to make a point, the transaction is actually a 2022 transaction. So I think there is an opportunity as the financial statements are being prepared to think about the disclosures that would be included in the fund accounts for 2022. And if you like, to take away the questions that have been raised by the Deputy and to try and answer them as best as possible in the financial statements. And so the committee will have an opportunity to consider it again when the financial statements are presented.
I think, Chair, the CNAG has referenced that in terms of the notes of accounts that are being prepared, and I think it would be useful that those would be considered.
I think that's a very helpful suggestion from the CNAG. Thank you.